All right, so Candace and I are going to answer a massive question in about 10 minutes. And that question is, how do I make fitness coaching a career? So bear with us. So we have different thoughts on this. My thoughts were more like overarching, more higher level, and not as detailed. And you had some very detailed thoughts on this. So the way that we'll go about this conversation is we'll just kind of bounce our ideas back and forth and kind of build off of each other, because I think you have some really good tactical things. So this won't be in any specific order, because I think depending on who you are as a coach, you might want to build some experience before you actually define what you want to do, or for other coaches it's going to be vice versa. The very first thing on my list was possessing the characteristics of a good coach, which I think is really important, which we did a separate video on, so that video will be in the description. So the top 5 characteristics that we laid out in that video were: number 1, understanding your beliefs and your value system. Number 2 was having humility. Number 3 is actually loving people and wanting to change their lives. Yes, that thing. Number 4 was being personable. And number 5 was like acumen or competence. So that was number 1 for me, just possessing those characteristics.
I love that.
And then number 2 for me, and then you can kind of build off of this. I'll go high level and then you go more specific.
Cool.
Number 2 for me was gaining experience. Yeah, so I think that's so important. I think we can, sit back and game plan what success means, or, we could, dream of when we're going to get started. But I think the most important thing is just to start working with people, whether that's yourself, whether that's your wife, your husband, your friend down the street, whatever it is. Like, if you have a passion for coaching, just get out there and start coaching people. I'm going to venture to guess that you have the knowledge or the acumen to get started, and you absolutely have more knowledge than the person that's next door, if you're really interested in this thing. So I think that's number 1, just go out there and gain experience. And so many learnings come from actually working with people, falling on your face a few times, learning from those mistakes and moving forward.
I think you always say something that is a one-liner that sticks with me in that scenario, that it could be helpful for people, is the teach what you know. Yes,
yeah. Absolutely. So kind of where that comes from is just like, don't worry about all the other things. Don't worry about all the fluff. What you know is what you know, and that's what you're able to execute against. And we could all be on this, and I fall into this all the time, right? Where it's just like, I want to know more, I want to learn more so that I can implement more. But we should use the tools that are already in our toolbox, become absolute experts at those tools. So if those tools are like a 5x5 program, deliver that, and deliver it with such success where only when you're like, that's like a habitual or second nature to you to prescribe against that, go out and learn something new and implement that thing. But I think it's really important to understand what you know and only prescribe what you know. Because when you start to play that game of like, I saw this here or that there, and I want to give it to people to kind of test it out, I think we could fall into some murky waters.
Yeah. So full disclosure, when I going through my side of the notes, I mean, obviously I am not a career coach. I spend my career helping coaches build successful careers. And so I'm thinking about it more from the business perspective. And of course, in marketing, in business, when you don't have definition of what success looks like, you really struggle without that aim to get started and to move forward in a manner that's going to propel you towards that goal. So for me, I started with saying, let's define what a successful coaching career looks like for you specifically, and get very detailed in that description. What does your day-to-day look like? Who are you working with? What problems are you solving for that individual? Are you someone who wants to work in person? Are you someone who wants to work online? Is it a mix of the two? Do you like working in a one-on-one environment? Do you like working with groups? Because how you deliver fitness and how you coach, there's endless opportunities for you to define what that career looks like for you. But getting specific, knowing yourself, knowing your strengths and weaknesses was kind of where I thought would be the place to start. Writing that down. And not that has to stay that way, because like you said, as you gain experience and you start testing these out from theory to practice, you might decide you don't like something, or you prefer something, or you're stronger at delivering fitness in one way or another. But that was where I started, was like, let's put it on pen to paper. What does your successful coaching career look like? Because just making fitness a career, or making coaching a career, could look like anything for anyone. So what does it look like for you? And if you had your dream job, what would that look like specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, I really like that and resonate with it. I guess where I would land on that is if you're a coach that can sit down and do that in a fairly quick way, and not get so married and take like a year to get that on paper, I would actually start there. I would just do that. I would sit down and be okay with that changing over time, but put those success measures on paper. But if you're that coach that's just like, I know that I'm just going to like hyper focus on this thing and overthink this thing and not get anything on paper for 6 months, it's like go out there and just get experience. But I would kind of like 1A, 1B, those two things. I like that.
Agree.
And this might actually flow off of that concept, but finding a mentor I think is really important. I think we want to find, so you said define success. Yes. After we define success, we need to find people that are having success in that way. Right. So, if my goal was to be a very successful remote coach, I'm going to probably go to like Sam Smith and be like, hey, Sam, how'd you get here, man? What are your systems? How do you communicate with your clients? How many clients do you program per day? What does your schedule look like? How does this thing look like for you financially? All of those things, right? Like I'm going to find someone that's like, in my network or just outside of my network that is like showing some characteristics of my success measures. And I'm just going to like dig in with them and I'm going to invest in that too. Right. Like if I find that mentor that has the answers, that has made the mistakes that I don't want to make, I'm going to pay that person, right? I'm going to pay that person to be a fly on the wall. I'm going to pay that person to pick their brain for 30 minutes every week, an hour every month, whatever the case is. But I'm going to find that mentor and I'm going to learn from them. And if you can't find that person, right? Like if you can't identify, someone that's having success in the thing that you want to have success in, it's like, not to second guess like where you want to go, but if it doesn't exist, and I'm not talking about like from an innovation standpoint where it's like you can't innovate, but if that success doesn't exist in some way in a person, I would venture to guess that maybe that's not a good direction to go, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just think we always should look at like who's already doing it in a way that we want to do it, even if we want to do it better, but who's doing it the best. And it's almost like getting into like the workspace early in your life, right? And looking at like in your position, who's the highest on the totem pole, right? In your company and your whatever the case is. And if you're just like, I don't want to be that person, it's like, yeah, this thing's going to serve its purpose for an amount of time, but you don't want to do this for the rest of your life.
Or oftentimes you think you want the outcome or the path, but then you get in and you realize what is under the hood.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't think I would enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
So like to our original point of gaining experience and having the plan, that's going to really inform a lot when you do find that mentor and you see what their day-to-day is like and you see what's involved in that day-to-day and if that's something that really aligns with who you are and what you want to do.
Yeah, it's funny. Just quick story. I'll be fast on it, but that's how I instantly made the decision that I didn't want to be in the military for 20 years. Is because I was like in my third year in, maybe fourth year in, and I was like headed to PA school, and I was like looking at, okay, what am I moving toward, and what does that actually look like? So I looked at like the PAs and I was like, do I want their life? Do I actually want to do that job? Do I think if I was them today, that would be like fulfilling and I'd be excited to do that? And everything in my mind was like, absolutely not. So I had made the decision right there. I was like, well, you're not going to, why are you going to go down this path if you don't even want to be where this path is leading you? So I think finding a mentor could almost be like that like truth serum that's like injected in you where it's like, well, they're having a vast amount of success in whatever this thing is. Do I actually want to end up there or even, better or transcend where they are? And if that question is no, it's just like, yeah, maybe pivot and do something else.
I mean, also like one of the core reasons we built mentorship into our education protocol, right?
Yeah.
Helps so many coaches, even like not only going through, the original education part of the journey and the community learning aspect of what we do, but the business accelerator or the remote coaching associate remote coaching program that we have. It helps those coaches just connect the dots and bring that thought to life.
The concept of like one-to-one mentorship is so beneficial. one-to-many mentorship is good as well, but nothing beats one-to-one in my opinion.
Yeah, it's similar to the point. So my second point was to do, again, going with the business hat on, to do more of a SWOT analysis. And obviously, again, don't be the person who spends a year doing the SWOT analysis, but what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are the opportunities that I have available to me? What are the threats that could potentially get in the way of me doing that? Where are the gaps that are created by me doing this analysis? What comes to light is like, hey, if I said I want to go do this thing in my definition of what my perfect coaching career looks like, but I have this major gap in skill set. Where do I need to seek out education? Where do I need to seek out mentorship? And I love mentorship because it is such an accelerated path for you to absorb and learn the fastest and then get to implementing right away.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my next piece was, and I think we'll have a lot of carryover on this one. So now you know what you want to do, or you have an example of how to get there. Now you have to actually build the plan, right? So this is more than just like, what does success mean to me? This is like tactically, what does this actually look like for me over the next 2, 3, 5 years, right? And that's building a business plan. So it's really sitting down, understanding who you're going after, who you are first, who you're going after, who that target market is. And there's a lot inside of that. We could probably do another bigger conversation on that idea. But understanding those things, understand how you want to operate your business, even if you're a sole proprietor. It's like, how are you going to operate your day-to-day? What are systems going to be inside of your business? Your neck of the woods, what is my marketing plan? How am I going to tell people what I do? How am I going to bring people in? All of those things. And then it's like, how am I going to move forward and execute these things? So that would be our next step, is like sitting down and actually putting together that business plan and seeing it on paper. What does it look like? And then the uncomfortable thing for a lot of coaches is you start to look into the financials, right? What does this thing look like for me right now? How much cash do I have in the bank? What is my runway? If I were to make $0 for the next 6 months, could I still do this thing? What does it look like for me to go from being in the red to in the black to in the green? When do I think I'm going to get into the black? When do I think I'm going to get into the green? And what does it mean to get in the green? How many clients do I have to coach? What is my expense structure? I can go on and on there, but like, you need to think about all that stuff. And the business plan is a really good place to do that. And I think a lot of people build business plans just to like check a box. But like, if you are actually invested into that business plan and you look at it as objectively as possible, some real truths can come out in that business plan. Not all bad, some really good truths can also come out in that business plan. But you're going to feel really good moving forward because you're moving forward against this plan that you had already laid out.
Yeah, I like that. So I think where I was with my step one was like a mini business plan.
Yeah.
Getting the core nuggets on paper to then get started. And then I think my brain goes to more like multiple or 2 key areas of proof of concept. So the first would be starting with yourself, treating yourself as your first client, starting to deliver the results that you would hope to deliver for someone else in your own life, and then being really disciplined about sticking to your own fitness practice and coaching yourself through that process. And I think there's a great opportunity for people right now to document that as it happens, so that you can start to think about putting yourself out there, building your personal brand, creating content through that experience, and showcasing it to the audience that you do have, to start building an audience with who has the similar interests. And then part B of proof of concept would be to like then identify a small like founding group of clients that you can take through that process, who've admired what you've been able to do for yourself, who see value in that, and that you can test, learn, get more experience with them, see if the model that you've put on paper originally has some opportunity, both financially and operationally, and then get to a point where you would, fully bake a plan. So I think my step 3 and 4 were like proof of concept. Mostly start with yourself, deliver the results, and then just identify a founding group of clients that you can take through the process as well.
Yeah, so depending on who you are and where you're at in this process, you might be a coach that actually starts with this, right? You might start with actually sitting down because you know what you want to do. You're like, yeah, I've done this already. I'm starting with a business plan and I'm really laying this out. So yeah, I like that. And then just even because my last step is like, okay, go out and do, right? Let's not spend too much time on this because I think we can go down a massive rabbit hole in terms of like, okay, how do you implement? Maybe that's something we hit next time. It's like, okay, how do you actually start executing your coaching practice? I think that'd be a good conversation. But actually getting out there and putting that business plan into practice, right? Because it's one thing, like I love planning things, but it's one thing to plan. And you know, what did the great Mike Tyson say? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. But I'm going to say everyone has a plan, but most people don't execute against that plan. So you have to go out and actually do it. So it's like, you know, get that first client. Well, treat yourself as a client, like you said. Get that first client, build that client through that first client via referral network. Make sure that everyone in your community or in your little circle know exactly what you do and how what you do can help them. Everyone needs fitness, right? So it's just like go out and do and start to learn through doing.
Yeah, absolutely. My last step was kind of defining your systems. So based off of the 2 proof of concept, and I think this depends on like what model or what the successful fitness coaching career that you've defined for yourself looks like. If it looks like an in-person coaching in a gym, that's very different than like building something that is digital and you can work from home and all those things. So my mind goes more to that side of things because I see what's happening in our current time and what coaches are asking us more frequently about when it comes to building remote services and building services that allow them to not trade time for money. But that my last step was really then starting to dig into the systems and thinking about what is your acquisition model, how are you delivering, what are all the systems that make you efficient and successful for scale, and then how do you need to think about refining those over time, which that could be its own video as well.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I will say before we wrap this one up, I don't think that you can be a good coach if you've never worked with people in person. I just don't think it's possible. Yeah, there's so many challenges and so many learnings that occur when you're actually on the spot and in front of someone and you're coaching them. That's not putting down remote or anything like that, but when you're in that remote environment, you have like this barrier of like disconnect that allows you, when you mess up or, you know, when you do the wrong thing, prescribe the wrong thing, blah, 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 you're not held accountable to that in real time. You have like this barrier of like, well, I'll respond to that later or those things, right? So I do think that you have to actually be able to, or you should work with someone in person before you go all in on this remote thing, because I just don't think you could be a good coach without that in-person experience.
Yeah, it's a great point. I know it's something we say a lot within our ecosystem, but the spending time in the trenches. And I just put that note in our document because I think that'd be a great video to create as well. But what does that look like? What does that mean? And a lot of that goes back to your first point about like getting the experience, right? You don't know what you don't know until you're in it. You don't know if you're going to like it until you're in it. And then the learning process that comes from just even shadowing someone who is active in the trenches and getting into the gym and working with people and figuring out like exercise selection, movement prescription, how you're helping someone adjust form. There's so many nuances that if you don't have a handle on that in person would make being remote really challenging. And I will start that video off by saying, and we'll end on this, but I'll start that video off by saying that I think that we overcomplicate a lot of that stuff, and what's going to move most people forward is so dang simple, and we already know it. We just have to do it with those people and get them really consistent on those things. And that's what we talk about when we talk about like nuances in exercise selection and this versus that. And it's just like, guys, what are we talking about? We're talking to Sally that hasn't exercised in 12 years. Get Sally doing anything in terms of exercise selection, and Sally's going to see some really good benefits. But the coach's brain, and you know, I've fallen victim to this, the coach's brain is we want to make things more complicated than they need to be, because those are the things that we're learning that we love to learn. We love to learn the things that are complicated, but just because we like learning those things doesn't mean that they're the only things that are going to have impact with people. So yeah, that's how I'll start off that video, but let's end this one there. Obviously there's a lot of rabbit holes that we will go down in terms of like digging deeper into each one of these things. Yeah, and even within like the 5 or 6 steps that we discussed, there's a lot of detail. So if you guys want us to go deeper on any one of those, please drop us a comment. Awesome. Thanks, guys.